us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. We're broadcasting live from the Marble Palace at the 91st General Assembly here in Little Rock. And you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Joining us now, we have the state director from Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas, Mr. David Ray is with us. David, welcome back, sir.
Paul, thanks for having me back on the show. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Now, you just tweeted out, we let people know this was happening, so everyone knows why you're on. We're talking about this new bill, actually a pair of bills, to increase the gas tax here in Arkansas. And I think a lot of people who've been listening for a while, they're not surprised if they've been listening to this entire session. But this is a black and white. You are now voting to raise taxes on the citizens of Arkansas.
That's absolutely right, Paul, and that's what they're trying to do. Is there's a pair of bills that work in tandem. The first bill would slap a 6.5% sales tax on the motor fuels tax. Now, the motor fuels tax, for folks who don't know, is already 40 cents per gallon in this state. 18.5 cents of that is levied by the federal government, and 20.5 cents is levied by the state government. So what they want to do is, in addition to the fuel tax you pay, slap a 6.5% sales tax on top of it, and then they would send a bond issue to the voters asking them to approve the financing of highway construction projects. And if the voters were to approve that, that would trigger the tax increase.
And so, as I'm reading this bill here, it's House Bill 1726 and House Bill 1727. This is by Representative Dan Douglas of Bentonville. He's a Republican from House District 91. It's pretty, his name's being attached to a lot of legislation that I disagree with. Puts, like you said, the full 6.5% state sales tax on wholesale gas purchases. So can we get this down to a dollar figure? What does that mean for the average Arkansas family trying to put gas in their car?
Well, so the sales tax would be levied on the wholesale price of gasoline, not the retail price. So last week, for example, the wholesale price of fuel in the Gulf was $1.57 a gallon. So a 6.5% sales tax on that price, you can do the math, that comes out to about 10.2 cents per gallon. That would be the increase. So you would effectively be increasing the Arkansas sales tax by 50% is what you'd be doing.
Okay. So let's start over. Let's do the math here on the calculator.
Okay.
Okay. So throw me those numbers again. What are we
All
looking
right.
at?
So a wholesale gallon of gas, $1.57.
Okay, $1.57.
You multiply that by 6.5%, .065.
Okay, .065.
That's right. That would get you to .102.
Yeah,
so
102,
10.2 cents per gallon.
Okay.
Then I guess let's say the average person, let's say, you drive a compact car, pretty standard, not a big gas guzzler, 12 gallons, multiply that 10.2 cents by 12 gallons.
By 12 is $1.22.
I think you can probably assume the average household in Arkansas has two cars, so you can multiply that by 2.
Times 2, that's $2.44.
Okay, so that's per fill-up. Now, I don't know about you, but I typically go through about a tank and a half of gas per week. So I guess multiply that by 1.5.
Okay, times 1.5.
And what's that get you to?
$3.67.
Okay, now that would get you to what you would spend more per week. Now multiply that by 52.
Times 52, and we're looking at $191.03.
So basically a $200 increase per household, and that's if you drive a compact car and only do a tank and a half of gas per car.
Unbelievable that they're just these revenue hawks. They just want as much revenue as they can from us.
Well, think about it this way, Paul. Earlier in the session, there was a lot of hullabaloo about the $50 million low-income tax cut. And now we supported that because we felt that was, although it's not the ideal proposal, it was a step in the right direction. This is a step in the wrong direction. This would practically wipe out all the savings that low-income Arkansans would get from the low-income tax cut, because a sales tax is a regressive tax, and it would affect low and working-income Arkansans more so than higher-income Arkansans. That's just a simple fact.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We're talking with David Ray. He's a state director from Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas, about these two bills to raise are taxes on the wholesale prices and they're going to say, well, it's only on the wholesale gas purchase, but of course we just demonstrated how that translates. That all gets passed on to the consumer.
Absolutely. Another way to look at this is that at a minimum, this is a 10-cent per gallon gas tax hike.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, Paul, that first of all, we have the highest gasoline and diesel taxes of any state that touches our borders. That's in addition to the highest income taxes on personal income in the entire Southeast, and that's in addition to the third highest sales tax in the whole country. So Arkansans are overtaxed as a citizenry already. Yeah. This would only aggravate that problem.
Yeah, it makes us less competitive. Representative Dan Douglas, the sponsor of this bill, he told one of the papers it's a revenue increase. I'm sure some will say it's a tax increase.
Well, yeah, the taxpayers.
Yeah, of course. Everybody else that doesn't just want to treat us like we're, some like money grows on trees. And I wonder, this is actually a proposal to refer the tax increase to the voters, correct?
Well, I don't believe the tax increase itself would go to the voters. The tax increase would be triggered if the voters approved the bond issue.
Okay, so it's actually, and this is where I get really frustrated, and everybody needs to listen up to this, because what that means is you're going to be voting for another amendment or another issue, not an amendment, but another issue on the ballot that has a title that's probably going to say something like economic development, and then if you vote for that, your taxes go up by 10% at the pump, or 10 cents at the pump, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. And look, I think we can all agree that roads are a core function of government. As conservatives, there's a lot of things we believe the government doesn't need to be doing, but construction of roads is one. Now, where I differ from a lot of folks, like Representative Douglas, is I think before we even begin talking about the prospect of raising taxes, we ought to exhaust all other avenues to fund our highway system. And the fact of the matter is there are a multitude of things that we could do to improve highway funding, to find efficiencies, to save money, to make our highway dollars stretch further without raising a single penny in taxes.
Yeah, do you have any examples of that?
Yes. So, first of all, if roads are a core function of government, we could prioritize them as such in the budget and utilize existing resources like the sales tax on things that have a direct nexus to transportation, like, for example, car tires, the sale of car tires, batteries, the sales tax on automotive repairs, things like that. That money could be diverted to roads. Depending on which items you use, that could potentially be tens or even hundreds of millions.
Yeah, essentially, what you're saying here is we have the resources to spend what I think most people would say, like you said, is a core function of government, but it just doesn't seem like it's a priority. Instead of making the hard choices of governing, which is what we're really talking about here, is saying, hey, you're probably getting this part of the pie, and you're not going to get any more because we need to build roads. We don't want to do that. Instead, we want to come back to the taxpayers and ask us to reward their bad governance. And that's really what it is. They've spent this money in other places, and they're coming back to us and asking us for more is a reward for their poor decisions.
That's right. And look, another thing that I'll just throw at you as another alternative that could be pursued, there's $32 million a year that is dispersed from highway funds that goes to non-highway related expenditures, things like funding fiscal agencies, the Constitutional Officers Fund, things of that nature. And frankly, when folks pay their fuel tax at the pump, I think they expect that money go to maintain roads. They don't expect $30 million plus each year to be siphoned off for non-highway purposes. That problem ought to be fixed before we even begin a discussion about tax hikes.
That's a great point, that all of it goes to where it needs to go. I had no idea, David. That's crazy. I didn't know that all of it didn't go towards roads.
Yeah, there's 3.1% of highway expenditures that go to fund constitutional officers fund, and then there's and also various fiscal agencies, and then there's 1.8% that goes to non-highway related funds, programs like road safety and don't drive drunk and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So those are all programs that, if they're needed, could be funded out of general revenue and take the burden off of the highway department and allow them to just focus on roads. So there's many things that could be pursued.
All right, this is going to be debated tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, in the which committee?
This is going to be in the House Committee on Transportation.
Yeah, and that is not in a room with cameras, right? They it's in the MAC building. They have no cameras,
yes.
And they have no audio. There will be no live streaming of this House committee tomorrow.
That's right. I will be there. I will be testifying against the bill on behalf of Americans for Prosperity. I would really encourage folks who are listening, if you don't want to see your taxes go up, this is our chance to stop this. I think that there's a decent chance that we could stop it on the House side if we mobilize the grassroots of this state in opposition to it. We have an action alert set up on our website, americansforprosperity.org. You can click on that action alert and fill out a form that will help you contact your state legislators and send a note to the governor and let them know that you oppose this plan, this scheme to raise your taxes on fuel.
Yeah, and this is another thing. The governors... if you go back a little while, I guess, last year, sometime last year, you had the governor's task force or whatever on highways, and they were trying, one of the proposals was a gas tax increase of, I thought, 10 cents or so, or maybe more than that.
Yeah, and so the Highway Funding Working Group met throughout last year, and they issued a lot of recommendations. The governor at the time rejected any calls for a tax increase, to his credit. We were very pleased to see that. And that's another thing that's a little bit frustrating about this, Paul, is we had a special session last year on highway funding, and there was a bill passed that the governor said was a 5-year fix. And that bill would have, according to his office, diverted $750 million over the next 10 years to highways. And yet here we are, less than 12 months later, debating this issue again. And, I think the people of Arkansas are getting tired of it. Take this into consideration. In 2011, the legislature referred the half-cent sales tax increase to the voters.
Yeah, they did.
That was passed in 2012. That is a 10-year tax, and we are only halfway through the life of that tax. And yet...
they need more money.
And yet the highway lobby is back in front of the legislature with their hat in their hand, begging for more and more money from the taxpayers.
Oh, gosh, I can feel your frustration. I'm very frustrated. Again, we're talking with David Ray, Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas. So we need to call our representatives. We need to call our legislators. There's no question about that. I get back to what we talked about at the beginning and what this will do to to just the average person, to everybody, that they're wanting more money from our pockets. And it just seems like the people down here don't want to listen to the constituents who are taxed enough already. I know it's cliche to say now, but I mean, good grief, we're taxed enough already. But all the politicians down here seem to just want to listen to those in this sphere of influence, this bubble down here at the Marble Palace. It's like they're forgetting everybody back home.
Well, the highway lobby is very powerful, and they're very influential. But the one thing that we do have on our side, Paul, is the people of Arkansas. We have polled this issue. The last time we polled this issue in Arkansas, we did a statewide survey in September of 2014, and the numbers that came back, we specifically asked about a 10-cent gas tax hike. And the numbers that came back were Arkansans of all political stripes, 64% were opposed. Now, that includes majorities of Republicans, as you would expect.
Yeah.
That number was in the low 80s. Majorities of independents, that number was in the mid-70s. And even a majority of Democrats, I believe it was either 51 or 53%, said they oppose a 10-cent gasoline tax hike. That is exactly what we're presented with this week. So I feel very confident saying that the people of Arkansas are on our side of this issue. We've just got to make sure that our voice is heard and that the legislature comes around to seeing things that way.
Last question. How frustrated are you that this will be on the ballot if it gets out? And legislators are going to say, well, it's not I'm not technically voting for a tax increase because it's going to go to the people, and if the people vote for the bond issue, then they pay more at the pump. I mean, do you buy that? Is that a legitimate defense for them saying, well, I don't support it personally, I wouldn't vote for it, but I support democracy, letting the people decide?
Paul, that is a distinction without a difference. And the folks who are taking that tack, the voters and the taxpayers will hold them accountable. You can go back and look at the roll call from 2011. The last time one of these issues to raise taxes was referred to the voters, I don't have the roll call in front of me, but I can guarantee you a lot of those members did not come back because they lost elections and they were held accountable by the taxpayers.
I think that's a really good fact. We should be reminding all of these guys down here that there were people that didn't come back when they supported this. David Ray, Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas. I appreciate it, sir. Thanks
so for having me on, Paul.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. The Liberty Machine rolls on back in just a moment.